Yo, what's up everyone? My name is Yura and we are back in Duel Links because the ban list is out. You can see right up here, we've got an upcoming Forbidden and Limited List update. I have maybe taken a little bit of a peek at it. I wanted to get a little bit of a head start on my thinking because I wanted to provide some updated deck lists for the deck profiles that I've put up because I don't want to have to go in into the comment sections of those and say, hey, the ban list has completely changed how this works, especially the Dark Galaxy profile that went up because that happened like 3 days before this ban list went live, and that kind of sucks. So we're going to go through only the rush part of the Forbidden and Limited list here. I don't really care that much about speed. I play it every so often for gems, but other than that, it's kind of whatever. But the rush things, I do really care about. So there's a lot of changes in this list from the things that I have just kind of initially seen right off the bat. Compulsory evacuation device to 1. I kind of expected this, I won't lie. This card is like the best card in the format, arguably, and even though it's already restricted to 1 copy because it's a legend, this just makes a lot of sense. I think if negate attack is at 1, this should also probably be at 1, though it does overall kind of suck because it is relatively new, but I think this is mostly okay. And another legend card getting dropped onto 1 in Pot of Greed. This is also kind of expected. This card is ridiculous and everywhere. And while it does kind of suck, it might actually open up the way for some other legend cards to get played in these slots. I know right off the bat, I'm already thinking of adding in like Avarice again, and Trap Hole I think is back on the menu. This will definitely open up a lot of these other legend cards to come back into the format, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not entirely sure just yet, but I am very curious to see how the legend slots and a lot of the top decks starts to shake out with these changes implemented. We've also got Scrubbing Santa Cloth to 1, which is an interesting choice. I think this is maybe like a tier 4 deck, if I'm being generous. I kind of just think that someone at the Konami office got milled out one too many times by this card and they decided to hit it to 1 so they didn't have to deal with it anymore. Overall, this is pretty inconsequential for the meta, but for the people that like this deck, I'm sorry that happened to you. I've literally never played this deck. I've never played against this deck. I've only seen like a deck list like once or twice, so my condolences to you. This does not affect me, but I'm so sorry this happened. And Dark Hole Device to 1. So this is a rough one for sure. This functionally locks Dark Galaxy out of both Pot of Greed and Compulse at the same time. So both of their legend slots are now gone and have to be completely replaced. I think there are some decent replacements for those slots, but yeah, this is rough. They had to hit this card in some way, either putting Apocalypse to 2 or dropping this to 1. I think we did kind of expect this to get hit in some way because Dark Hole Device is a ridiculous card and it is one of the most feel-bad cards to have resolved against you, so it makes sense that it's here. It just kind of stinks. But I think that is it for the limited list. Yep, that's limited 1 done. On to limited 2. Maginical Miracle. This is a psychic card from a while ago. I haven't actually read this card. I don't even know if I own it. Oh, no, I do. I have 2 copies of it. Oh, so I have the perfect number. Maginical Miracle is if you have a face-up monster with 100 attack, 100 defense on your field, send this face-up card to your field to the graveyard. Special summon a level 7 psychic type monster from your graveyard in face-up attack position. Okay, so this reborns like your Prima Gatarnas and your Can Melodies for psychics by having Candy on field. I guess that's okay. I don't really know what that does to fully further your plays. I guess you can do this before you fuse away your Candy for Candy Live and then get 2 level 7s on board by using Candy's effect to reborn the other level 7. It's an interesting card to go to 2. I think this was at limit 3 before. I don't know why I scrolled down. I just revealed another hit. We'll talk about Klein in a second. We'll come back to that. I think this was at level 3 before, so this now no longer conflicts with Star Restart, and I think Psychic has another limit 3 too. So this is probably fine. I'm curious to see if this makes Psychic any more playable. So now we got to talk about Transm Klein. This is our Light Galaxy hit for the list, I guess, because we didn't see any of them up here. If this, I saw another card. That's not very good. So Transm Klein, I think this is a fine hit. If this is the only hit Light Galaxy's getting, they're definitely still the best deck in the room. Transm Klein going to 3 is kind of weird because Klein before was, like I said on my deck profile, copies 4, 5, and 6 of your Galactica Oblivion for the purposes of your skill. So you could just like add it back to hand and then immediately fire the skill to spawn a card out of the ether. And now you're going to have to rely on exactly Extraplorer to do that, which is not bad. Don't get me wrong. Extraplorer is still a fantastic card. It puts a lot more importance on Extraplorer sitting there and resolving, which means if Trap Hole does become a little more popular, that becomes a significantly better choke point to hit in Light Galaxy, which is like, okay, I like Light Galaxy having some more weaknesses. This means that Light Galaxy will, in theory, have less opportunities to just spawn cards out of the ether because they have less copies of Galactica Oblivion. So we'll see how that shakes out. I think Light Galaxy is still probably the best deck in the room if this is their only hit. Void Corridor. So now we have a problem. Dark Galaxy is a deck that really revolves around finding Dark Prophet specifically and having consistent access to Dark Prophet. Before, you could play this super turbo deck that just played a bunch of Void Corridor, you filled your grave up super fast, and you used Void Corridor to get your guys back. Dark Prophet is now a little bit harder to access because with Void Corridor going to 3, Chrysaor is also a limit 3. So you now can't just play 3 of each of these, so you probably have to make concessions somewhere, and I imagine Void Corridor is going to take the bigger hit here because Chrysaor is just such an unbelievable card to have access to, so I can't imagine dropping that to 1. I think like a 2-to-1 ratio is probably fine, but this is definitely going to hurt Dark Galaxy's ability to repeatedly access blowout plays. And overall, I think that's probably a healthy thing for the format, but it does, like, as someone who really likes Dark Galaxy, it does kind of suck to see that Dark Galaxy seems to be getting the biggest hits in the room. Of course, this is also likely a hit to Chaos Galaxy. I think Chaos Galaxy is probably the biggest loser out of this ban list so far. Yeah, that's all right. That's it for the limits. Chaos Galaxy is probably dead in the water. I don't actually know if you can play Chaos Galaxy with these. You might be able to make it work, but it is significantly less consistent than it was before. So yeah, I don't know how to feel about these limits. Overall, I think this is like it's like an okay list, I guess. I really wish there were some more Light Galaxy changes. I honestly, the issue with Light Galaxy is not their cards, it's their skill. And there is no skill changes at the current time. So we'll see if they actually push out a skill update for Light Galaxy to maybe stop them from spawning cards out of nowhere so you don't get to play 4 or 5 copies of a limit 3. I am still curious to see how the format shakes out with these changes. I don't think the top 3 change. I think it's still Light Galaxy, Dark Galaxy, and Spellcasters, so I think Dark Galaxy is maybe now a little bit closer in power level to Spellcasters because their blowouts are not as consistent, but we'll see. And on to the unlimits. Steel Mech Lord Mirror Innovator is a very cool card to come off the list. This card is very powerful, but I think machines overall are still definitely weaker than everything else around. Executing Riding to Unlimited. That is really, really, really cool. I don't know if it does anything, but this is sick. I'm actually super pumped to see this card at Unlimited. Prior to this, it was really hard to justify fitting this card into other decks because they had some really important limit 3s. Spellcasters wanted to play Go Cyclone, Dark Galaxy has like 9 limit 3s now, and Light Galaxy has Secret Order and now Klein. So having this in the Unlimited slot means this might actually make a larger appearance. I think it still has the problem of it has kind of bad matchup into Light Galaxy, so unless we get another hit to Light Galaxy, like the skill, it might not be as good, but I'm really happy to see this come off the list. This is a very powerful trap card. Sea Dragon King Granganus, this card sucks. Actually, hang on. So Umi is a deck that had both a limit 3 and a limit 1. If the limit 1 is still around, this deck is still turbo ass. So if I don't see Grand Extreme and they're no longer on list, this deck still doesn't do anything. Dragon's Fortitude, that's fine. That's who cares. And Meet and Greed. Again, who cares? Maybe Meeg can become the next tier 5 deck in the room. And that, okay, that's it. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this list. It's hard to put my full thoughts into order here. I think overall my thoughts on this list are negative because I don't really think Dark Galaxy needed this level of hits, and I would have liked to see another Light Galaxy hit. Spellcasters didn't get hit on this list at all, which I think is totally fine. That deck is like, I think it's still good. Like, it's still a top 3 deck for sure, but it's not like, I wasn't super worried about the power level of Spellcasters. Light Galaxy's probably still the best deck in the room. I've said it a couple of times. Dark Galaxy, yeah. The Legend spell is going to 1. Does promote a little bit of diversity in those slots, but I think the hits to Dark Galaxy are really rough. It doesn't kill the deck for sure, but it is still really tough. I am really excited about the Unlimits. I think Mirror Innovator and Executing Writing are really sick cards to have in the Unlimited slot. I am very curious to see how this format shakes out. Maybe this list will turn out to be okay and things will be just fine. And honestly, if we get a skill hit to Light Galaxy, I think this format is still in a great spot. Even without it, I think this format is still in a really solid spot. It's just that Light Galaxy is definitely the best deck in the room now, and it already was. It just kind of is keeping its spot there, which is like, overall, that's fine. I think it's fine to have a best deck in the room, like a deck to beat. I just wish Dark Galaxy didn't get hit as hard as it did. But I do want to swap over to showing off some deck lists for my initial thoughts on where I think this leaves the format and where the decks I think might adapt to. So we're going to swap over there real quick. Okay, so first up, I want to talk about Dark Galaxy because this is absolutely the deck that got hit the hardest. Yeah, it's rough. I don't really know what else to say. It's a rough list change. Double Crysaor and 1 Corridor as opposed to 3 and 3, which we could do before. The legend slots that I think this deck can play, I think Avarice is definitely a consideration, but I also do kind of like Polymerization in this slot. I've played with Poly in this deck before to just fuse like Crysaor and Requiem out of your hand to make like a Gigantomachia, which is still a very good play. I think this is totally fine. I just really like having access to the draw power that Pot of Avarice gives, and Dark Galaxy fills its graveyard so fast as it is that I think it's probably fine to slot in. Trap Hole is an interesting one to talk about though. So given all the other legend traps and where they fit on the ban list, I think Trap Hole actually might see a decent amount of play going forward. It hits some really interesting choke points in a couple of the other decks. I think trap holing on an Extraplorer is actually a really decent choke point because Extraplorer is currently now the only way they have of getting a Galactica Oblivion back into their hand if they only have them in the graveyard. I do also want to try out Universal Storm in this deck. I think now that this deck has less access to Dark Hole Device because it's at 1, having better access to back row removal will help this deck play through more. And honestly, that's probably where this deck needs to kind of go because you really need to just like stick a power play now, as opposed to like if you get interrupted, you don't really have the ways to extend that you did before because Corridor is now at 1. The deck absolutely still has access to some crazy power plays, and I think overall it won't lose its top 3 spot, but it is definitely the deck that got hit the hardest. Next up, we've got the best deck in the room, Light Galaxy. I'm not entirely sure if this is where this list is going to end up. I do really like Pot of Greed in this deck. I think this is probably the best legend spell to use in this deck. It doesn't really need something like Hammer Shot or Poly, but like maybe we can mess around with them. I think having access to Pot of Greed as just like a raw draw spell to give you access to your boss monsters way quicker is much, much better than trying to use something like Polymerization. And I think it is absolutely worth the limit 1 slot over something like Compulse, just because if Light Galaxy finds access to its combo, it doesn't really need the extra backup just because this deck is so explosive on a general like turn-by-turn basis. So in lieu of Compulse, we're playing Trap Hole. Like I said with Dark Galaxy, I think Trap Hole is actually a really decent contender going forward with the Forbidden Unlimited changes, so it's something that I want to try out. Executing Writing here is definitely the 30th card in this deck. I'll be honest, I didn't really know what else to put here. And like Galaxy, getting a guy back from graveyard, like be it a fusion or like an Oblivion, is totally fine. I think Field Presence is a decent thing to have access to. And I'll be honest, I just couldn't find another card to slot in here. So I'm sure this list will absolutely change as the format goes on, but this is just kind of like my interim thoughts. And finally, Spellcaster. This is a weird one. Pot of Greed in this deck is really good, and I'm not going to even try to argue that it's not. You want to be finding one of your 9 cards for your combo every single turn, but honestly, if Trap Hole is going to become more popular, I think Polymerization is actually a really solid card to use here. A Trap Hole on your 7th Road Witch, if you don't have Strange Witch in hand, can be devastating, so Polymerization plus Compulse might actually be the legend combination I go with. I think the only other real consideration for spellcasters in this format is maybe Hammer Shot, and that's like okay. Just being able to delete an opponent's monster at your whim is really powerful, but it's not great if your opponent is like setting 3, which you can be anyway, but you want to have the ability to, I think, extend in a world where your plays get interrupted with like a bad Trap Hole or if you get hit by a Compulse. So that's all I've got for you today. I think this ban list could have definitely been better. There is certainly some things in here that I would have loved to see over some other changes. I think Dark Galaxy overall definitely got hit the hardest, and then but it might be okay in the long run. I'm very excited to see how this format shakes out and how decks will adjust their legend slots. So with all that said, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.